Fed, they're not raising the rates. They're not lowering the rates. This is really not a big concern to me. I can tell you, and they're going to get into this here shortly. Look, when I started real estate, they were coming down from like 15%, right? In 1981, in fact, all the way from 1980 to 1990, every deal that I bought, and I bought a bunch of them, the interest rates were 10% interest, 10% interest. I remember the first loan that I got from a bank about 5 years after I started being an investor. I was 24 years old, and I got a 9.25% interest rate from the bank. And that was for the first home that I actually decided to live in. I went through 5 houses before I lived in the first one, right? I didn't do a house hack. I bought houses under market, resold them for more, and that's what you should be doing. Also, I got my son helping me. Son, you might have to get us back on the phone, because I forgot. We'll get the phone. Anyhow, we'll be going live here. We can take some calls. But look, in the comments there, what do you guys think? Do you think interest rates should be lower? Do you think they should be lower right now? Do you think they're particularly high? It's an interesting problem that we have because, and in the 40 years I've been doing this, 40-something years, I'd never seen inflation and high rates. Usually that'll stave it off pretty quickly, and then they'll make the adjustments that they make. But, we just had so much money get thrown in. We had printed money with Obama. Then we had, the giveaway money with this big hoax. I call it a hoax. But anyway, so I'm going to start this, and if there's any issues hearing me, please let me know. If somebody give me a thumbs up or put a comment in there. And I'm trying to go live more often when I can. And we will can take some.
Please visit the call-in studio website and begin your session. Music will play until your session begins, or you may call back when you are ready.
And that sort of thing. So I'm going to hit host show, son. Can you take care of it? Bear with me a second.
Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the call-in studio web interface.
Okay. Go ahead and call it to make sure. So look, I'm going to put the number up here. If you just got here, first time coming here, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I tell people all the time, I'm the best mentor you're ever going to find. There's few people that started as early as I have and been doing real estate for over 40 years. Yep, I see it, son. Excellent, thank you. And I'll tell you, I feel like I'm one of the luckiest men in the world because I've got, all 4 of my kids now are in houses, and about half of what they're worth, and my kids are becoming investors, right? And that's was my ticket. I was a millionaire in the 80s, right? When most of my friends were just getting through college, I was already a millionaire. And that's what is out there, and that's what can happen for you. So look, this gentleman here, some of you guys probably know him, probably watch him. I don't even know his name off the top of my head, but nice enough guy. And he does have, he's one of these guys, he loves the data, he loves the article reading. And I'm telling you, I'm not one that's big on that. My area is about 20-mile periphery around me, right? In other words, what matters in this area is what affects me, okay? And I've made tens of millions of dollars. I have hundreds of thousands of dollars a month coming in rental income, right? I have hundreds of thousands of square feet. And briefly here, let me just show you, just give you an idea. And then just so you know, people, and I hate doing this for you guys that already know how much property I own, but this is for the folks who are just getting in here. But all these properties you see here, and this is just in the area where I live today, but you'll see everything that you probably dream about owning or have owned or drive by. I've got strip centers, apartment buildings, industrial buildings. So I buy just about everything. I bought 5 houses. Yeah, 5 houses I bought in like the last 14 months. So I don't get slowed down by what people are calling a recession or a crash. You can make money all the time. You just have to have the discipline of buying under market relative to what the market is today. And I'm going to go ahead and speed this guy up just a little bit. And let's see. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bump him up just a little bit. He isn't particularly slow, But let's get this going.
So the Federal Reserve had their meeting today, and today's meeting was a very special one because they updated the projections, and they don't do that at every single meeting. And I'm telling you, their updated projections were not good. So I'm going to show you. Okay, so here's their reports. And you can find this for yourself on the Federal Reserve's website. So it's their summary of economic projections, and it's also known as their SEP. So this right here, what you're looking at, that's the most important table in their report. Okay, so their last projections were in March. And in March, the Federal Reserve projected that the US economy, or GDP, would grow by 1.7% this year. Now, they revised it downward to 1.4%. So they expect a slower growth rate than originally anticipated. The unemployment rate right now is at 4.2%. In March, they projected that the unemployment rate is going to rise to 4.4% by the end of the year. Now, they're expecting it to go even higher to hit 4.5%.
So here's the thing. Last time Trump was put in office, I expected things to crash. I thought we were going to go down the tubes then, but he surprised me. He's a very savvy guy, and I've met Mr. Trump personally. Shook his hand, talked to him. I was a VIP donor, and really engaging guy. I'll tell you what, when you start talking to him, boy, you better be on your toes because he's listening to every word you say. And so you better be on your, I'll tell you, you can just see this guy, he just listens. He listens like a hawk and watches like a hawk at what you're doing. So what do you guys think that are out there? Somebody comment, just so I know the damn comments are working, please. And we'll keep, and somebody tell me what this guy's name is. I apologize.
By year's end. And right now, PC
Brian Kim? Okay, thanks, son.
inflation is at 2.1%. In March,
make sure the audio is working on that end, son. If you would go to the YouTube.
They expected it to go up to 2.7% by the end of the year. But now they expect inflation to rise even higher to 3.0%. And it's the same story for core PC inflation. Right now it's at 2.5%.
See, I'm going to just fast forward through.
Who's going to argue that, oh, this is great?
You have to pay attention to the interest rates, right? You got to pay attention to the interest rates, but it doesn't matter. Listen, everything has value. And I just did a video here last week, and I was showing a little stretch of a neighborhood, right? Just a little tiny stretch. In fact, I'll show you right here, just because it makes it easier to look at. So look, here's an area where, where is it? Got too much stuff going here. Yeah, right here. So I'm going to show you this. You see these 5 dots? I bought every one of these houses, right? Actually, I'm buying this one at the end of this month, okay? But I bought many houses. Look, I bought this house, and I bought this one. I bought this one back here, 5906 loan, yeah. And I made $2 million. I made several $1 million just in this one little neighborhood. The purchases that I made there, I basically bought 20% of the neighborhood there, and I got another place I bought 20%. Look here, I'll show you a completely different neighborhood. And this is what I've done in recent times. I bought 15, 16 homes in one subdivision that's only about 350. And then over here, I bought this one I just was showing you just now. I bought, and I bought one of them just this last week. But this is why you got to walk the walk, right? I paid $550,000 for this place. I paid $129 for this place. I paid about $129, $139 for this place. I think I paid $139 for this place. This one I paid $220. But every time I bought one of these properties, it was worth at least $100,000 more than what I was paying for it. And in the case of this $550, it's worth about $750. So I'm making, but pro rata to the money that I'm putting out, I expect a bigger return. And that's what people don't do. People don't have high enough standards. They just don't have high enough standards. And if you have low standards, guess what? You're going to hit them all the time. And that's the worst thing in the world. That's why you can get in there, you get out there, and you get so anxious to buy something. You buy something, and then the economy goes down. And if you didn't get enough of a margin, see, if you buy way under market, right, 30, 40% under market, if you're, then you have a little bit of a hedge. In other words, you can think, maybe I'll hang on just a little bit longer. Feel like things are getting better, and see, maybe you do that, and then you go, you know what, I'm feeling better, I'll hang on to it a little longer, and then all of a sudden things start ramping down, you go, okay, I'm out. But it's because you've got, and if you haven't seen my book, I got a great book, Wake Up and Smell the Real Estate. I wrote this book, I wrote it actually a long time ago, but I published it in 2021, I think 2020. instant bestseller on Amazon. And if you take a look at the reviews on that, people tell you there's no fluff, no bullshit, because I'm just incapable of it. I'm always straight to the point. But be sure to get a copy of Wake Up and Smell the Real Estate. Spend $10, $20 before you go throw 10, 15, 20 grand in with some idiot fake guru that is just bullshit and he doesn't know what he's doing. So you got to be really careful. But back to this, okay? Again, let's go to clear. What is it? Clear value tax. Brian, sorry to be rude, Brian. I do like this guy. Again, he's not an investor to me. He's not a real estate investor. I mean, he might own a piece of real estate. That does not make an investor. I'm talking about a guy that makes a living flipping property, buying, holding. That's what I do. That's what I've been doing for a very long time. Very, very big distinction between just somebody that just simply, buys a home. And in fact, he's, this guy buys silver and other stuff. I know he's got something following up on that. And I don't know why we have so few people watching. Somebody better. Am I coming through? Are you hearing me on YouTube? Okay. All right. I guess it's just me. Anyways.
Great news. No. I mean, the Federal Reserve is projecting slower GDP growth, higher unemployment, and higher inflation. It's like a trifecta of bad news. Anyways, in terms of interest rate cuts, the Federal Reserve is still projecting two...
Listen, I just want to say something about bad news. It's relative. Bad news for somebody is not bad news for everybody, okay? Oh, gee, interest rates are high. Nobody can buy a home right now. Okay, that means a lot of people are stuck in their home. That means a lot of other people, they're going to run out of time, and they're going to have to refi at a higher rate, and they're going to be upside down. They're not going to be able to make their mortgage. Yeah, bad for them, right? Not so bad for an investor like me and other people, because now somebody's going to fail. Somebody's going to fail. They're going to go back to the bank. They're going to lose the property. It's going to go back to the bank. Maybe there's going to be a short sale. Believe me, I bought a property one time. I bought a 30,000 square foot apartment building that had sold for, when it was crashing, it sold for 1.2. After that guy bought it, it was like a stair-step recession. And a lot of people don't even know what I'm talking about, but there's stair-step recessions. Things go down, and then they go down again, and then think, oh, we're at the bottom, then people buy, and then guess what? It goes even more down. That property sold for 1.2, then 750, then 550. Each time after that sale, it went back to the bank, and guess what? After it went back to the bank for 550, I picked it up for 340, right? I picked it up for 340. Now, it was making money. Very quickly, of course, I am on top of it. You got to really be on top of it. You have apartment buildings, believe me, they suck. That was like a C-grade property, and I could show you a video of that. If somebody wants to see it, I'll show it to you. But there's money in everything, and ultimately, the ideal stuff to me is commercial and that sort of thing. But there's risks with everything. But houses and residential, the reason I've never been able to stop buying houses is because there's more of them than anything, which means there's more opportunities than anything. There's more buyers. They're easier to resell to somebody else. There's always somebody else that's going to take it. But let's keep watching.
Interest rate cuts this year in 2025. Okay, so those are the projections. Now let's talk about what happened today. So the Federal Reserve has decided, to no one's surprise, that they're not going to cut interest rates today. Also, they're going to leave quantitative tightening unchanged at $5 billion a month. Now, I want to show you the highlights of the Federal Reserve press conference. Okay, so let's start with this one. If the labor market weakens, then that incentivizes the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates, right? But that's the thing. Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve, they're saying that to them, the labor market looks good right now. So please take a look.
So you've seen the unemployment rate remain pretty stable at 4.2. It's been as high as 4.3, but those are good numbers. So it's a pretty good labor market. There's a more concerning thing is there are not a lot of layoffs, but there are not a lot of job creation. If you're out of work, it's hard to find a job, but very few people are being laid off at this point. So that's an equilibrium we watch very, very carefully because and
it just depends on where you're at. There's a lot of engineers that were jumping ship for $200,000 to $300,000 to $300,000 to $400,000 jobs. I'm in Austin, Texas. There's just people make shitloads of money here. People go to work and then 3 or 4 years later they got $500,000 saved in the bank. Something you could never do even as a small business. But those are the kind of wages they pay. Well, those wages have backed off some. There's not as much of that is happening right now. But again, overall, people are working, and I think there's just a hell of a lot more confidence. I feel much better with our new commander in chief, and but we got to have certainty. That's why what's probably more important than anything is the big beautiful bill. The big beautiful bill that has to pass. I mean, it should pass. It needs to pass. We need permanent tax cuts. and people say, oh, this has got to happen because if the government doesn't do this, it'll be bad. Listen, the government specializes in doing bad. They do the stupidest, worst thing. Politicians in general are scum, and both sides, doesn't matter. They're self-serving, and they never do what's right. But let's listen some more.
If there were to be, significant layoffs, and the job finding rate were to remain this low, you would have an increase in unemployment fairly quickly. But that hasn't happened. It really hasn't happened. The U.S. economy has defied all kinds of forecasts for it to weaken, really over the last 3 years. And it's been remarkable to see just again and again when people think it's going to weaken. Now, eventually it will, but we don't see signs of that now.
Now, let's address the projection of rising inflation. So what's driving that expectation? According to Powell, it's the tariffs. He's saying that tariffs are going to push up inflation over the next coming months during the summer. So please take a look.
Thank you. Colby Smith with the New York Times.
Yeah, and I don't trust this guy's judgment, by the way. I can tell you right now, this is a guy that said that he would not lower the he wouldn't lower the federal rate unless he got inflation down to I think he said 2 or 2.5%. And guess what? He lowered it, even though he didn't get down to that. He lowered it, and I think he did it as a political favor. Okay, I think he did it as a political favor, and people got to understand that stuff happens. Political favors happen, and I think that's what he did, and he shouldn't have. I don't think they should have gone. They just before the end of this last year, he lowered them, and it shouldn't have happened. And I predicted they wouldn't go down because they shouldn't have gone down. And now here he is. He hinted that they were going to drop again, and today he's not dropping them. So like I say, the tariff things I totally disagree with. If he's relating that to going to cause unemployment or inflation. Listen, I've imported tens of millions of dollars of goods from China, and I've been to China, and and primarily that's what we're talking about. They kind of supply most everybody. I've been in million square foot factories. I've been in Ningbo, China. I've been to to where they John Deere. They build John Deere tractors out there. I remember on my way out there, what am I seeing? It was a sea of green. And when I got close enough, I realized, holy shit, they build John Deere tractors out here. And I've been in million square foot factories. I've seen bags of purses twice as tall as a person, and they're sitting there with a machine, sewing machine, throwing them over their head as they make them in names of countries that I've never heard of, in dialects and text I can't even, I've never even seen before. They make everything for everybody. It's pretty amazing. It's a very, very amazing, huge powerhouse. And, but I'm telling you, I've had Chinese undermine each other. In other words, I was a big buyer. I buy stuff by the containerful coming in from China. And then another Chinese manufacturer says, hey, I have the same thing. And I mean exactly the same thing. They copy the shit out of each other besides copying the USA. And come to me and say, I give you the same thing, you're paying whatever, $245 a piece. I got same thing I give you for $195. And then I put that in the ear of the person that's selling me the stuff, say, hey, listen, these guys are killing you. I can't give you $50 more than these guys. And they go, okay, we beat it. And then they beat it by like $25 more again. In other words, they beat them again by 50% more again off. So in other words, that's kind of like a tariff. So in other words, somebody comes in and says, hey, I can give you the same thing for 30% less. And then instead of the guy that's selling to you say, oh, I can't do that. He goes, oh, yeah, I can do that. And he takes it even further down. People don't understand. There are huge margins on Chinese products, huge. And so you can have a tariff, a 20% tariff, and you just tell the manufacturer, say, hey, I can't eat this. You got to eat it. And they'll eat it. They'll eat it. They have the margin on it. And if you ever want to think about something, think about this. Think about look, I have devices, big as my hand, right? Worth $400 or $500. Cost me half that much to make. But, for a company that I own. Then you take a look at a treadmill. Take a look at a treadmill. Okay, a treadmill weighs like, 600-800 pounds. It takes 2 people to deliver. It takes a lot of space. It's a box weight, big box weight. That thing gets made in China, gets here, goes into a warehouse, goes from that warehouse into a Costco, goes from the Costco, gets on a truck, gets delivered to you, and then you get it, and you spend $500, $600, $700, whatever, $800 on a treadmill. Thing breaks. They send a service technician, comes out and fixes the thing. It's unbelievable. So much mass, so much weight, so much work, so much engineering done for $1,000. Treadmill is huge, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, and they make it for peanuts. I'm telling you, it is. You just have to have a perspective. If you have an industrial perspective, you've been out, you've seen what can be done and what can be made. And that's one of the reasons I go to Taiwan, I go to China, and I call Taiwan Factory Island because you can just see how fast things are made and how, in the different ways that they get there, whether it could be sintering or, there's different processes for making different things. So, hey, somebody please comment. Would you please, Tom? Why don't you comment, just because I want to know if these comments work. Anyways, anybody ever been over to China? Anybody ever actually seen manufacturing? Anybody actually know about that stuff? Anybody got any particular fears around interest rates? I mean, listen, I would love to borrow money cheaper. And look, I've got right now, I'm looking to sell. I mean, this is kind of how it hurts me. I've got a commercial building. It's about 22,000 square feet. I want to get rid of it. And unfortunately, the reason I want to get rid of it is because of the ridiculous tax assessor's office. It's just ridiculous. It's just way, way overzealous. And, it's just worthless. They're becoming worthless. They really are becoming worthless. It's like, why everything should be privatized, because sometimes the people that in government, they do such a shit, piss poor job that when, especially when you get in these kinds of things, that they end up having to sub it out to somebody more competent anyways. So anyway, let's keep watching.
To what extent has the more limited impact from tariffs at this stage on inflation changed your view on what the ultimate economic fallout will be from these policies and the timing of when they will materialize in the data?
So we've had 3 months of favorable inflation readings since the high readings of January and February, and that's, of course, highly welcome news. Part of that just is that core services, both housing services and non-housing services, have really been grinding down toward levels that are consistent with 2% inflation. So that's the good news. We've had goods inflation just moving up a bit, and of course we expect, as you point out, we do expect to see more of that over the course of the summer. It takes some time for tariffs to work their way through the chain of distribution to the end consumer. A good example of that would be goods being sold at retailers today may have been imported several months ago before tariffs were imposed. So we're beginning to see some effects, and we do expect to see more of them over coming months.
Now, let's cover this. The Federal Reserve is projecting slower growth and higher unemployment, right? And those are reasons to cut interest rates. So the question is then, why don't you cut interest rates right now? And Jay Powell says it's because in the upcoming months ahead, he expects inflation to go higher. So it's kind of offsetting those reasons to cut interest rates. So please take a look.
If I could follow, you've said the policy is in a good place and that it's modestly restrictive. Given all the uncertainty you just talked about, tariff levels, uncertainty around the pass-through, is it price increases versus margin compression, some of the softness that Chris talked about in labor and housing, why wouldn't it be better to have rates at a more neutral setting as the economy heads into this period of very high uncertainty?
So if you just look backward at the data, that's what you would say, but that's not. We have to be forward-looking, and the thing that every forecaster, every outside forecaster, and the Fed is saying is that we expect a meaningful amount of inflation to arrive in coming months. And we
Yeah, so look, I'm a non-expert, but I don't actually believe that is going to be completely true, because what you're seeing is we got Trump bringing back jobs, and you're going to see more and more things get manufactured. Well, what happens is when they start manufacturing more, and that's what we need more blue-collar jobs anyways, and we need the ability to make tanks and bombs and guns and everything else. We're never going to be able to defend ourselves. But with those manufacturing jobs coming back, which reminds me, Ross Perot was right. I voted for Ross Perot, 30 years ago, whatever it was. And, they said the big sucking sound coming from Mexico. Well, they did. The jobs did get sucked out to Mexico, and they went to China, they went to everywhere else. And now, and believe me, I've owned machine shops, and I've owned cabinet shops. I own heavy-duty machine. I love machines. And it's heartbreaking to see how many machine shops and how many factories in our country have just disappeared over the years, and it's hundreds and hundreds a year. But we need those factories and now look at AI. AI is starting to wipe out a lot of the more intellectual jobs, right? Engineers, lawyers. I mean, you can type up a real estate contract. You can type up all kinds of contracts right now, and AI will make it for you, and it'll make it perfect, quite perfect. And but guess what? AI isn't going to fix your car. AI isn't going to, there's a lot of things AI can't do that takes physical labor. And so that's why it's kind of neat. I think there's going to be a resurgence of more labor, more people that actually have to work with their hands. It's kind of a sad, today manual labor for many people today is scanning barcodes at, beep, beep, beep. It's just kind of a joke. So, let's keep watching.
We have to take that into account. So I think a backward-looking look would lead you to a neutral stance, but we can't. We have to look at that, and because the economy is still solid, we can take the time to actually see what's going to happen. There's a range of possibilities on how large the inflation effects and the other effects are going to be. So we'll make smarter and better decisions if we just wait a couple of months or however long it takes to get a sense of really what is going to be the pass-through of inflation and what's going to be the effects on spending and on hiring and all those things.
So as you can clearly see, Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve, they don't want to cut interest rates right now, and they want to take a wait-and-see approach. But then the reporter asked, okay, if that's the case, then why did you cut interest rates late last year? What's up with that?
Excellent.
And Jay Powell says because back then.
And that's an excellent point. And like I said, that was a political favor. And just as well, his reason maybe he just doesn't like Trump, right? Because I think he would have dropped the rates like he did when Biden was running against Trump. That would have been kind of a nod, right, to Biden. And this shit happens all the time, by the way, folks. So it was a good point. I'm glad he raised this.
They were projecting inflation to go lower, but now they revised that, as you clearly saw, and they expect inflation to go higher, so now they don't want to cut.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Kelly O'Grady, CBS News. You're famously known as the guy that makes decision based on data instead of speculation. You've said today the inflation data is in a good place. We don't know how tariffs are going to impact prices going.
And here, this is great. I love it. Good job, Kelly. She's calling out this guy because he's speculating.
Going forward, that's uncertain. But I've got to go back to the last time that you cut rates in December, and there was still the what if of tariffs. So what made you feel comfortable cutting then when inflation was higher than where it is today?
And also, when he cut the rates then, the rates were not as low as he said. He said he would not cut them until they hit, I think, 2% inflation. Came down to 2%, but he still cut them.
You didn't cut today.
Well, the forecast for inflation in December was 2.5. Core PCE for 2025, the forecast was 2.5%, which is a good inflation forecast. I think what we've learned is that, and this was long before we had any idea of what the actual policies would be, we've learned that tariffs are going to be substantially larger than forecasters generally thought. And we don't, our forecasts are generally not particularly different from those of other well-resourced forecasting.
And let's remember, the tariffs are being bargained. They're being bargained. Trump throws out big ones, and then they split the baby, and they're not as high as what they're initially thrown out at, right?
So what we learned, and particularly in April, was that very substantially larger tariffs were coming, and that would mean higher inflation. That's what happened. And so now you saw 2.5% forecast in December, you saw 2.8% in March, and you see 3.1% now. So it's 0.6 higher inflation for 2025, and that's a big part of the change, and that's due to the effects of the tariffs that are, we don't know where they're going to land, but it's pretty apparent they're going to land higher than outside forecasters were really guessing at the end of last year.
I hope so.
Now, I want to bring this to your attention. So Powell is saying that he doesn't want to cut interest rates because there's so much uncertainty around the tariffs, right? But I want to bring this to your attention. So Trump paused the tariffs for 90 days, and that 90-day deadline is coming due. It's gonna come in early July. So if Trump brings clarity to the situation when the deadline happens, then that's gonna be a green light for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. And the market expectation is that that's gonna happen. The interest rate cut will happen in September. So please take a look.
Now, I would say without tariffs, that confidence would be building, because if you see what's happening with non-housing services and housing services, which are the other two big pieces other than goods, those are coming down really nicely now. So I think we have to learn a little more about tariffs. I don't know what the right way for us to react will be. I think it's hard to know with any confidence how we should react until we see really the size of the effects, and then we can start to make a better judgment.
Now, here's an interesting question. A reporter asks, should Americans expect to feel pain in the second half of 2025 because of the higher interest rates? And Powell says, no, Americans should not, because everything is fine right now. He also says, like what we just discussed about the tariffs, that if there's clarity regarding the tariffs, then that's going to make them more inclined to cut interest rates, because it'll give them more confidence.
Are you indicating here that Americans should expect some sort of economic pain in the second half of the year?
I'm not saying that at all. From our standpoint, what I can say is that the U.S. economy is in solid shape. Inflation has come down. The unemployment rate remains at 4.2%. As I mentioned, real wages are moving up. It's a good job creation is at a healthy level. Unemployment, again, as I said, low. Labor force participation in a good place. So, and what we're waiting for to reduce rates is to understand what will happen with really the tariff inflation.
So that is your Federal Reserve recap, and please.
The supposed tariff inflation. He doesn't know. So it's just, like I say, Powell is conveniently speculates, or he's inconsistent, right? He's just inconsistent. He's not been that great.
Let me know what you think. Please subscribe. Thank you for the support, and I wish you a very nice day.
All right. So good job, Brian Kim. Again, and we'll do more on this. I don't know. What are you guys watching? What do you guys, are you worried about it? It doesn't matter to me with interest rates go up or down, because good times are bad. It brings about a different set of opportunities. I got a student in my class, like I said, I got two of them actually, probably made over $2 million here this last month. Each, completely different states. And in part, usually, and one of them, it's actually directly related to, our government intervention in a negative way. And, like I say, the only thing you can never count on the government to do, like Reagan once said, he said, there's nothing more terrifying than the government showing up at your door saying, we're here to help. There's nothing worse. So, anyways, hey, if you just got here again, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. If you don't have my book, get my book. And be sure to go to the links below if you got any interest in, mentorship. Like I say, I believe I have more successful students doing more deals, more worthwhile deals that take care of you for a lifetime, deals that will bring you passive income that you can hand down to your kids, and just fantastic passive income opportunities. There's a bunch of them out there, and you can make it for yourself. I did it. I was in my 20s when I first retired. I was 27 years old. And, I've never looked back. I've never had to look back. It's like a giant treasure hunt. It really is. If you're, and I want to emphasize this because I try to show you the things that other people cannot. And every one of these properties you see behind me, every single one of these is a property that I personally have negotiated, purchased, and have reaped the rewards on. There's a 16,000 square foot office building right there. These are the kind of assets that you die tomorrow and they'll continue to take care of your family. That's a little school. This is another 20,000 square foot building there. Multiple houses, all kinds of houses back here. Restaurants, all these kinds of things that you drive by every day. And believe me, for those of you that are yawning at this point, I guess real estate is not your subject, because this stuff here, if you're really interested in real estate, this is like, this is like real estate porn, for lack of a better description. In other words, this is exciting, right? Restaurant, about that restaurant, it was an amazing deal. I'm afraid to even use dollars amount anymore. People, but if you go to flipanythingusa.com, which let me just pull that up real quick. Go to Flip Anything USA, and what I'm going to do is point you here, Flip Anything USA, and just go to, you can get a free ebook, by the way, go to the links below. Go in here, just fill that out. Name, email, I'll send you a free ebook. I'll give you a chapter on something you probably never heard of, and it might be an opportunity that you'll have right there for you. But when you get in here, you can also go to the success page. I urge you to compare the success page, my success page, to anybody out there that claims to have successful students. You will see many students here that have made deals that will take care of them for a lifetime, take care of them, their kids, and their kids' kids. It's really, really an amazing. There's not a faster, quicker way to passive income and to retirement. And you don't have to be 50. You could retire much younger if you wanted to. You just got to make. Good life is by design. That's what I tell all my kids. That's what I tell all my friends. Good life is by design. You do a good job designing your life, and you'll never really you never have to work for anybody again other than yourself, which is the way to go. See ya.